What's going on, folks? It's Colion Noir for another awesome episode of Seeing Live. Joining you on this beautiful Thursday. I'm just going to hop right into it. Joining me live today is Jen Jakes from Bearing Arms. What's going on?
Not too much. Just trying to stay warm. It's cold up here.
So, the age-old debate of carrying with around in the chamber has kind of reared its ugly little head here recently.
Yes, it has.
And all right. So I'm just gonna let you take it.
Well, I mean, I think the most important point to be made is that if and when you do meet somebody with a different perspective than you, it's really important that you not browbeat them or be condescending. I would say the best course of action is just to put them in the frame of mind of really thinking about what would I do in this situation and how fast could I rack my gun and how would I react if somebody were almost right on top of me. And that gets them in the mindset of, oh, I might have to think differently. I might have to carry differently. And that will save lives.
Yeah, I always bring this up quite often in talking about the mental visualization that I usually engage in whenever I think about carrying a firearm and when I would have to use it in the situations I may find myself in. And usually when I started out, most of those scenarios were very clean. I knew exactly what was going to happen, when it was going to happen. Everything went bad perfectly for me. And so I started realizing that that's not how reality typically works. I may not see it coming. Chances are I probably won't see it coming. It'll probably startle me. I may take a second to even process what's going on. I may get shot right out of the bat, but still be in it. There's so many different variables that I think a lot of us as concealed carriers don't necessarily always take our minds to the ultimate conclusion of what could possibly happen. And I think that's where you kind of get the mindset of a lot of individuals who are like, well, I don't need to carry with around in the chamber. I'll be fine. Because there are so many different elements that we don't think about. And like for me, when I first started out, I didn't carry with around in the chamber. I didn't do it for several months, actually. And as I started, you bring up a good point. Nobody really browbeated me to the point of making me feel bad about not carrying with around in the chamber. Luckily enough for me, because I largely kept it secret and didn't tell anybody. But but what I did do was, even though I didn't keep around in the chamber, I did continue to do research. And I continued researching, trying to understand why I should or shouldn't, or am I being realistic about whether or not I do have, can I really protect myself adequately by not having a round in the chamber?
No, absolutely. You know what? For me, it was actually a sales guy at Gander Mountain, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about what would you actually do and how far away are you going to be from a potential attacker? And how fast could you draw? We were talking about things like that. And he said to another salesperson, he's like, why don't you go this far away, come up on me, I'm going to see if I can't draw. And this is a military guy who's obviously had training. Yeah. And he could not get the gun out of his holster fast enough before the other sales guy was on top of him. And that got me thinking, my gosh, I mean, you take that extra second, it doesn't matter. You don't have time. They are up on you. And and like you said, there are so many variables. Mm-hmm. Are you shot? You have adrenaline. You have nerves. Don't put yourself in a situation where you have more things to think about and worry about.
Absolutely. I know for me, I've been on the range sometimes and I'm just kind of casually just racking around in chamber and I short stroke it while I'm on the range and there's no one shooting at me. So I can only imagine if I'm in a fight for my life and I pull my gun out.
And you're thinking this is the difference between life and death.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think the other thing is, I took a street encounters course down in Virginia, a 3-day course. And that really got me thinking differently. And of course, you always leave training thinking, I need more training. But they had us moving. Uh-huh. You had to be moving and shooting. You had to be drawing. You had to be, take the proper stance. And I think that more people should really take those courses that force you to be yelled at and have to think on your feet. You don't know what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
no,
you're prepared.
I've taken plenty of courses, but I remember the first courses I started taking were the ones that were really eye-opening. And it changed the way I approached, the way I carried, my carry setup, all of it. And then for me, what I did was I thought to myself, out of the entire time that I've carried without a round in a chamber, how many times had I gone to pull my gun, pull it out of my, pull it out of my holster, pull it out of my pants, and saw that the trigger was engaged.
Right.
And then I had to ask myself, okay, at this point, well, okay, then what's the difference between that and a loaded gun? And actually having a round in the chamber. And
that's true.
Yeah, and that largely is what got me to the point of saying, okay, I think I'm comfortable with the idea of carrying with a round in the chamber. Now, of course, there's a level of precaution that you always need to take, especially when it comes to racking around in the chamber, unloading your gun, and so forth and so on. And so for me, the first day of doing it was a bit nerve-wracking. It was a different level to the carrying experience. It went from first, I'm like, oh my God, I'm carrying a gun on me. And then, from there, then I started carrying with the round in the chamber. And then I'm like, oh, okay, this is different. But there was oddly enough, I had more confidence in my ability to protect myself, because I now understood it was one step, like you said, you pointed out, which was excellent. It's one more thing I didn't have to think about anymore. Because in my mind, I always was like, okay, man, I'm going to have to realize, I got to rack around into the chamber and do all of these things that I normally wouldn't want to have to think about in a situation that was happening really quickly, very dynamically. So that's an excellent point that you bring up in that regard.
Right, and I think it's intimidating enough just to have the responsibility of carrying a loaded weapon. Mm-hmm. But then to add, okay, am I carrying with one in the chamber? Where am I carrying? How am I carrying? Where am I that I can pull my gun? And it's a lot of responsibility. And it is definitely intimidating. But I think that this is a conversation that needs to happen. And we just have to approach it as, hey, if there are people that are carrying without one in the chamber, that's fine, because that's their choice.
Yeah.
We just want them to think, what are you going to do if somebody is right on top of you? Are you prepared to take that extra second or whatever it is? Are you prepared? Have you put yourself in that mindset? I think 9 times out of 10, if you put people in a different set of shoes, they look at things a whole lot differently.
Absolutely. And I know I went through that process. And, and it's like you want people to do things correctly from the standpoint of, what makes them most effective in defending themselves. So inherently, I'm going to want to say, okay, yeah, you probably want to carry with a round in the chamber. But, for me, I knew it was a process for me, and it's going to be a process for everyone else. But, taking the courses, or just even having the conversation or providing the examples that the guy at the gun store did for you, all of those things can help kind of nudge people over into getting to the point where, we're saying, okay, look, this isn't about ego. This isn't about being an elitist. This is about you being more effective at being a concealed carrier. And when people start to understand that, then it really starts to click. And they get it. You'll see the light turn on in many ways.
Right. And, stories like Christy McMain's, where she was carrying her gun when her attacker got up on her, mm-hmm. but she was carrying it in her purse. And her purse was underneath her in her car. Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is read the news and say, okay, there are instances where I can learn from other people's lessons. I should probably carry on my body so that it's not leaving me. And I've had this conversation with a lot of women where I'll say, so what happens if somebody slashes your purse strap and grabs your purse? And they don't think about that. And I'm like, do you have a slash-free, strap?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's probably something you should know, because all they have to do is come up behind you and slash it, and they're gone. Yeah. Now they have your gun. Now what?
True. And one other thing too, and it's kind of in line, but a little bit not, is safeties. I largely don't run guns that I carry with safeties on them. And you tell that to a lot of novice people, they're like, oh my God, why would you not want a safety on your gun? Well, when I took a course and I had a Beretta 92 that had a safety on it, and I had to run a simulation while I was walking through a house and I was dealing with a home invasion, I pulled my gun to shoot the intruder, and my gun didn't go off because my safety was engaged.
Safety's on. And how many of us have actually done that, though, really?
Right.
They pulled the trigger and went.
Oh, crap. Yeah, the safety's
But
on.
my thing is that I always advise women, you should be consistent.
Mhm.
If you have magazines that you carry with that either have 7 or 8 or 10, I mean, whatever it is that you're carrying, make sure that every single one of your magazines have the same number of bullets in.
Yeah.
I had a woman say to me, well, but why? And I said, because if you are pulling the trigger, do you want to be thinking, wait, is this one that I have
5
8
rounds or
10?
6 rounds? Yeah. Yep.
Right,
Yep.
right. But
Absolutely.
I think that it's intimidating to ask those questions, and it's a huge responsibility to think about that because you could possibly be taking someone's life who's trying to take yours. That's a big issue.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about some Guns and Roses and some of Jesus, some of the anti-gun rhetoric coming from one of the members. So we'll be back.